I was unwrapping my turkey sandwich when I saw them through the break room window. Two people in navy blazers with clipboards, standing outside my cubicle. My heart didn't race. It just knew. Tessa Carmichael had finally done it. The compliance officers were rifling through my workspace like they owned it. One was photographing my computer monitor. The other was opening my desk drawers, wearing latex gloves like I was contaminated. I watched them for maybe 30 seconds before walking over. "Find anything interesting?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. The taller officer looked up from my filing cabinet. "Ms. Rodriguez, we're conducting a routine inspection based on reports of workplace violations." Routine. Right. I knew exactly what reports they meant, and I knew exactly who had filed them. Tessa was hovering 3 cubicles away, pretending to organize papers while watching everything unfold. She'd been building this moment for months. "What kind of violations?" I asked. "Unprofessional conduct, systematic errors in client communications, potential safety hazards in workspace organization." The shorter officer read from his notes without looking at me. "We need to complete this inspection before you can return to your workstation." Before I dive deeper into what happened next, could you please take a few seconds to tell me in the comments where you're listening from, because I want to know where my story is reaching. And please like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because what I'm about to share with you changed everything about how I see workplace dynamics. My name is Ana Morales, and I've been working at this major insurance company for 4 years. I handle high-value client accounts, which means when I mess up, it costs serious money. Tessa started here 6 months after me, and from day one, she made it clear she thought my position should belong to her. See, Tessa had this thing where she needed to be the smartest person in every room. She'd interrupt my client calls to clarify points I'd already explained perfectly. She'd CC our supervisor on emails correcting grammar mistakes that didn't exist. She'd volunteer for my projects and then suggest improvements that made no sense. But here's what really got under her skin. I was quiet about my successes. When I landed a major account, I didn't announce it in team meetings. When clients sent thank you notes, I didn't forward them to the whole department. I just did my work and went home. And that drove Tessa absolutely crazy because she couldn't compete with something she couldn't see. So she started watching me, really watching me. She'd note what time I arrived, when I took breaks, how long my lunch lasted. She'd walk past my desk randomly to see what I was working on. She'd ask seemingly innocent questions about my methods, then suggest I might be doing things wrong. I realized what was happening pretty early on. Tessa wasn't just competitive, she was building a case against me. She needed me to fail so she could succeed. And that's when I decided to give her exactly what she wanted. I started making tiny mistakes. Nothing major, just small inconsistencies that someone obsessively monitoring my work would notice. I'd send an email with Thursday when I meant Friday, then catch it an hour later and send a correction. I'd file something in the wrong folder, then move it the next day. I'd use effect instead of effect in internal memos, then fix it during proofreading. These weren't real errors, they were breadcrumbs. And Tessa devoured every single one. She started keeping a folder. I know because she left it open on her computer screen when she went to the bathroom, and I happened to walk by. Ana Morales, performance documentation. It was labeled. Inside were printed emails, screenshots of my computer screen, and handwritten notes about my patterns of incompetence. While Tessa was building her little prosecution file, I was working on something else entirely, something that would matter when the moment came. I started keeping a gratitude journal, not for any official purpose, just a personal practice I'd heard about in a productivity podcast. Every evening before leaving work, I'd write down 3 good moments from my day. A client who thanked me for solving their problem, a coworker who helped me with a difficult calculation, a supervisor who complimented my presentation. Just simple, genuine appreciation for the positive interactions that made my job worthwhile. I kept this journal in my desk drawer right next to my regular work supplies. Nothing hidden or secret about it. Just a small leather notebook where I recorded moments of professional gratitude. The entries were honest and specific. Daniel Cho from accounting stayed late to help me understand the new billing software. His patience made a frustrating day so much better. Client Mrs. Patterson called just to say how much she appreciated my follow-up on her claim. It's moments like these that remind me why I love this work. Alicia brought coffee for the whole team during our budget meeting. Small gestures like this make our workplace feel like a community. Month after month, I filled pages with these observations. Every person who showed kindness, professionalism, or excellence earned a mention. Every positive interaction, no matter how small, got documented with the date and a brief description of what made it meaningful. What I didn't realize at the time was that I was creating an accidental audit of workplace relationships. As I wrote these entries, a pattern emerged that I hadn't noticed before. Some people appeared constantly. Daniel Cho from accounting showed up dozens of times for his helpful explanations and collaborative spirit. Alicia from human resources earned frequent mentions for her thoughtful gestures and professional guidance. Even our strict supervisor, Mr. Walsh, appeared regularly for his clear feedback and fair treatment of the team. But one name never appeared. Not once. In 18 months of gratitude journaling, through hundreds of entries documenting positive workplace interactions, Tessa Carmichael had never done a single thing worth acknowledging. Not one helpful gesture. Not one professional courtesy. Not one moment of genuine collaboration or kindness. I hadn't planned this. I wasn't trying to exclude her. But as I reviewed my journal entries, the truth was undeniable. Tessa had never contributed anything positive to anyone's work experience. She existed in our office like a black hole, consuming energy and attention without generating any warmth or light in return. 6 months after I started the journal, Tessa made her move. It was a Tuesday morning when she requested a meeting with our supervisor and the compliance department. She presented her carefully organized folder of my performance issues and requested a formal investigation into my work quality and professional conduct. Ana Morales has demonstrated a pattern of errors and unprofessional behavior that puts our client relationships at risk, she told them. I've been documenting these issues because I care about our team's reputation and our company's standards. Mr. Walsh listened to her presentation, reviewed her evidence, and agreed to authorize a compliance inspection. Standard protocol required that I be notified, but Tessa specifically requested that the inspection happen while I was at lunch so I wouldn't have the opportunity to prepare my workspace or hide evidence of violations. And that's how I ended up watching 2 compliance officers search through my belongings while I stood there with half a turkey sandwich, knowing that everything was about to change. The officers were thorough. They photographed my computer screen, which showed a perfectly organized client management system. They examined my filing cabinet, which contained meticulously labeled folders in alphabetical order. They reviewed my email correspondence, which demonstrated clear, professional communication with both internal teams and external clients. And then the shorter officer opened my desk drawer. "What's this?" he asked, pulling out my gratitude journal. "Personal notes," I said. "Just some thoughts about work." He flipped through a few pages, reading quietly. Then he looked at his partner and nodded toward something I couldn't see. They were having a silent conversation with their eyes. "Miss Rodriguez," the taller officer said, "would you mind if we reviewed this notebook more thoroughly? It appears to contain workplace observations that might be relevant to our investigation." "Of course," I said. "Take all the time you need." What happened next was something I'll never forget as long as I live. The officers sat down at my desk and began reading my journal from the beginning. They weren't scanning quickly. They were studying each entry carefully, sometimes pointing at specific passages and whispering to each other. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 15. Other people in the office started noticing. Work conversations quieted as colleagues realized something significant was happening at my cubicle. Tessa moved closer, trying to see what the officers were reading that held their attention so completely. After 20 minutes, the shorter officer looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Ms. Rodriguez," he said slowly, "how long have you been keeping this journal?" "About 18 months, I replied. "And these entries are all authentic? You're not exaggerating or fabricating positive interactions for any particular purpose?" The question surprised me. "No, of course not. Those are just genuine moments of appreciation. I write them down because focusing on positive experiences helps me enjoy my work more." The officers exchanged that look again. Then the taller one stood up and walked over to where Tessa was pretending to organize files. "Miss Carmichael," he said, "could we speak with you privately for a moment?" I watched Tessa's face change as she realized this wasn't going according to her plan. The officers weren't arresting me or confiscating my computer. They were asking to speak with her. The three of them walked into the small conference room at the end of our floor. Through the glass walls, I could see them talking, but I couldn't hear what was being said. Tessa's expression shifted from confident to confused to something that looked like panic. They were in there for almost 30 minutes. When they finally emerged, Tessa looked like she'd been crying. The officers returned to my desk, where I'd been sitting quietly, answering emails and trying to process what was happening. "Ms. Rodriguez," the shorter officer said, "after reviewing the evidence presented to us and conducting our own examination of your workspace and documentation, we're closing this investigation with no findings of misconduct or policy violations." Relief flooded through me, but I could tell there was more to say. "However," the taller officer continued, "we do want to discuss some concerns that came to light during our review." He opened my gratitude journal to a page near the middle and showed it to me. "In 18 months of documenting positive workplace interactions, you've mentioned 63 different people by name. Colleagues, supervisors, clients, vendors, security guards, cleaning staff, 63 people who made your work experience better in some way." I nodded, not sure where this was going. "Ms. Carmichael's name appears 0 times in your journal." The words hung there between us. I looked at my journal, then at the officers, then toward the conference room where Tessa was still sitting alone. "That wasn't intentional," I said quietly. "I just write down moments of genuine appreciation. If someone doesn't appear in my journal, it's not because I was trying to exclude them, it's because—" I couldn't finish the sentence. Because saying it out loud would make it real, and I wasn't sure I wanted that responsibility. "Because they never did anything worth appreciating," the shorter officer completed. "We understand, and we think Miss Carmichael understands now too." They closed my journal and handed it back to me. "The irony," the taller officer said, "is that she was so focused on documenting your mistakes that she never considered what her own behavior looked like from the outside. Your journal inadvertently created a record of workplace relationships that reveals more about office dynamics than any performance review ever could." They packed up their materials and prepared to leave. As they walked away, I heard one of them say to the other, 18 months, and not a single positive mention. Can you imagine being that consistently? They were too far away for me to hear the rest. I sat at my desk, holding my gratitude journal and trying to understand what had just happened. Around me, normal office sounds were returning. Keyboards clicking, phones ringing, quiet conversations about project deadlines and weekend plans. But everything felt different now. The compliance investigation that was supposed to destroy my career had instead revealed something much more devastating about the person who'd orchestrated it. Tessa Carmichael had spent months documenting my tiny, inconsequential mistakes, while being completely blind to her own toxic impact on everyone around her. She'd been so busy trying to prove I didn't belong here that she'd never considered whether she belonged here herself. And now everyone knew. I didn't see Tessa for the rest of that day. She disappeared from the conference room sometime while I was answering client calls, and her cubicle stayed empty until closing time. I figured she'd gone home early, maybe to process what had happened, or maybe just to avoid the sideways glances from coworkers who'd witnessed the whole thing. But the next morning, she was back, and she was different. Tessa arrived exactly at 9 o'clock, said quiet hellos to people who greeted her, and sat down at her computer without her usual performance of bustling importance. No dramatic sighs about her workload. No loud phone conversations meant to demonstrate her expertise. No walking around the office offering unsolicited advice about other people's projects. She just worked, quietly, like the rest of us. I thought maybe the compliance investigation had given her some perspective. Maybe she'd realized how her behavior looked to others and decided to change. Maybe this whole nightmare was actually going to have a positive ending where we all learned something about workplace communication and moved forward professionally. I was so naive. The real story started unfolding 3 days later, when Daniel Cho from accounting stopped by my desk during his afternoon coffee run. "Hey, Anna," he said, keeping his voice low. "Can I ask you something kind of weird?" "Sure," I said, saving the client report I was working on. "Did you know that Tessa has been asking people about your journal?" My heart started beating faster. "What do you mean?" "She cornered me yesterday in the break room. Started asking if I knew you were writing about people at work, whether I thought that was professional, whether I was comfortable with my personal interactions being documented without my consent." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "What did you tell her?" I told her the truth, that I think it's nice someone notices when people are helpful or kind. But Anna, she's not just asking me. She's talking to everyone. Alicia, Mr. Walsh, even people from other departments. Daniel Cho glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then leaned closer. "She's trying to make your journal sound creepy, like you're spying on people or building some kind of surveillance file. She's telling people that documenting workplace interactions without consent could be a privacy violation or harassment." The realization hit me like a truck. Tessa wasn't learning from what happened. She was doubling down. She couldn't accept that the compliance investigation had revealed her own toxicity, so she was trying to turn my gratitude practice into something sinister. Has anyone seemed convinced by what she's saying?" I asked. Daniel Cho shook his head. "Not really. Most people think she's reaching. But Anna, she's persistent, and she's good at planting seeds of doubt. You know how she operates." I did know. This was exactly Tessa's pattern. When direct confrontation failed, she'd switch to subtle manipulation. She'd turn my moment of vindication into a new weapon against me. That afternoon, I decided to test Daniel Cho's warning. I paid attention to how people interacted with me. Were conversations shorter than usual? Did anyone seem uncomfortable or guarded? At first, everything seemed normal, but by the end of the week, I started noticing small changes. Alicia from Human Resources, who usually stopped by my desk for friendly chats, suddenly seemed busy whenever I approached her workspace. Mr. Walsh's responses to my emails became more formal, less warm. Even the security guard who normally exchanged pleasantries during my morning arrivals just nodded politely without his usual smile. Tessa was poisoning my relationships one conversation at a time. I realized I had two choices. I could confront this directly, march into Mr. Walsh's office and explain what Tessa was doing, but that would make me look defensive and paranoid. It would confirm her narrative that I was overly focused on workplace dynamics and personal relationships. Or I could do something else entirely. I decided to give Tessa exactly what she wanted, but not in the way she expected. The next Monday morning, I sent an email to my entire department with the subject line, "Personal Journal, Transparency and Consent." The message was simple. "Hi, everyone. Some of you may have heard that I keep a personal gratitude journal where I occasionally note positive workplace interactions. I want to be completely transparent about this practice and ensure everyone is comfortable with it. The journal is purely personal, a way for me to focus on positive moments in my workday. It's never been shared with supervisors or used for any professional purpose. However, I understand that some people might feel uncomfortable having their kindness or professionalism noted in someone else's private writings. If you would prefer that I not include any interactions with you in my personal journal, please let me know. I will absolutely respect that preference, and it won't affect our working relationship in any way. I value all of you as colleagues and want everyone to feel comfortable with how we interact professionally. Best regards, Anna." I sent the email and waited. Within an hour, my inbox started filling with responses, but they weren't what I expected. Alicia was the first to reply. "Anna, I had no idea you were writing about positive moments at work, but I think that's wonderful. Please don't stop including me. It makes me happy to know that small gestures matter to people." Then Daniel Cho, "Keep writing. If more people focused on appreciation instead of complaints, this would be a much better place to work." Mr. Walsh sent a longer response. "Anna, your gratitude practice sounds like an excellent way to maintain a positive perspective in a demanding work environment. I appreciate your transparency and professionalism in addressing this matter directly." One by one, my colleagues responded with support, curiosity, and encouragement. Several people asked if I had any tips for starting their own gratitude practices. Others shared stories about how small acts of workplace kindness had impacted their own careers. By the end of the day, I had 37 responses. 36 of them were positive, supportive, and grateful to be included in my journal. One person didn't respond at all. Tessa's silence was deafening. While everyone else was celebrating the idea of workplace gratitude and mutual appreciation, she couldn't bring herself to engage with the conversation. Because engaging would require her to acknowledge that she'd been wrong about my journal, wrong about my motivations, and wrong about how our colleagues would react. But the most devastating part was yet to come. Over the next week, something beautiful started happening in our office. People began practicing gratitude more openly. Alicia started leaving thank you notes on people's desks when they helped her with projects. Daniel Cho brought cookies to share with the team and included a note about how much he appreciated working with all of us. Mr. Walsh began opening team meetings by acknowledging someone who'd gone above and beyond that week. The gratitude practice was spreading, and it was creating exactly the kind of positive workplace culture that everyone wanted to be part of. Everyone except Tessa. Because in an environment where people were actively looking for reasons to appreciate each other, Tessa's behavior became impossible to ignore. When everyone else was expressing genuine thanks for collaboration and support, her constant criticism and competitive undermining stood out like a siren. I watched her try to adapt. She started saying thank you more often, but it sounded forced and hollow. She attempted to give compliments, but they came out as backhanded observations that left people feeling worse than before. She even tried to start her own gratitude practice, but her entries focused more on her own contributions than on appreciating others. The contrast was stark and uncomfortable. While the rest of us were building each other up, Tessa remained focused on tearing people down. And now that everyone was paying attention to workplace dynamics through a lens of appreciation, her toxicity became impossible to miss. 3 weeks after my transparency email, Mr. Walsh called me into his office. "Anna," he said, "I wanted to thank you for introducing this gratitude practice to our team. The change in morale has been remarkable." "I'm glad it's had a positive impact," I replied. "However," he continued, "this new focus on workplace relationships has also highlighted some concerning patterns with one of our team members." He didn't need to say who. "I've been observing interactions more carefully since your email, and I've noticed that while most people are embracing this culture of mutual appreciation, one person seems unable or unwilling to participate in positive team dynamics." Mr. Walsh opened a folder on his desk. "I've also been reviewing the complaints and concerns that have been brought to my attention over the past 6 months. Individually, they seemed like minor personality conflicts or communication issues. But when I look at them together, with this new perspective on workplace relationships, a troubling pattern emerges." He showed me a list of incidents. All of them involved Tessa creating conflict, undermining colleagues, or disrupting collaborative efforts. The compliance investigation was the final straw. "Mr. Walsh said, using company resources to pursue a personal vendetta against a colleague is unacceptable, but what really concerns me is the systematic nature of these behaviors." He closed the folder and looked at me directly. "Anna, I want you to know that your gratitude practice didn't just improve our team culture. It also gave us a framework for understanding what positive workplace relationships look like. And once we could see what positive looks like, the negative became impossible to ignore." I sat there absorbing what he was telling me. "Tessa has been moved to a different department," he continued. "One where her individual contributions can be valued without the need for extensive team collaboration. It's not a demotion, but it is a recognition that she's not suited for our collaborative environment." I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief that the toxic dynamic was finally being addressed. Sadness that it had come to this. "The irony," Mr. Walsh said, "is that Tessa's own investigation into your work quality led us to discover that you're one of our most valued team members. The gratitude journal she tried to use against you actually demonstrated how much respect and appreciation you've earned from everyone in this organization." He was right. My simple practice of writing down positive moments had become a mirror that reflected everyone's true workplace character. And in that mirror, Tessa had been forced to see exactly what she'd become. 2 months later, I heard through office gossip that Tessa had requested a transfer to our company's branch office in another state. A fresh start, they said. New colleagues who didn't know her history. I wished her well, genuinely, because I understood now that her behavior wasn't really about me. It was about her own insecurity and inability to find joy in other people's success. My gratitude practice had simply made that truth impossible to hide. The revenge I'd gotten wasn't the kind you see in movies. I didn't destroy her career or humiliate her publicly. Instead, I'd created a mirror so clear and honest that she couldn't stand to look at her own reflection anymore. And in trying to tear me down, she'd accidentally revealed exactly who she really was. My gratitude journal is still on my desk. I still write in it every evening before going home. But now it serves a different purpose than when I started. It's not just about my own positivity anymore. It's become a reminder that the way we treat people matters, that kindness leaves traces, and that authenticity always wins in the end. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about making someone pay for what they did to you. Sometimes it's about creating a world where their behavior simply can't survive. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever dealt with a toxic colleague or found yourself questioning your own worth because of someone else's insecurity, please let me know in the comments. Share your own experiences with workplace dynamics, gratitude practices, or moments when truth revealed itself in unexpected ways. And if you want to hear more stories about navigating difficult people and finding authentic ways to protect your peace, please like this video and subscribe. Your support means everything to me, and knowing that these stories help people feel less alone in their struggles makes every difficult moment worth sharing.